Welcome back to Lytudiep channel. After many days of separation and tired searching, perhaps everyone wants a family reunion meal together. Today Diep returned. She cried while eating with James' family. It was not for any other reason but because the warmth of James' family made her feel safe. She felt the love and affection of the family that she had not felt for a long time. Today let's come to this story. James, a successful CEO known for his quiet nature and steady demeanor, had spent months living in the shadows of anxiety and loss. Diep, the gentle girl who had once brought warmth into his life, vanished suddenly after a tragic incident, kidnapped by cruel hands and lost without a trace. In those painful months, James's life lost its rhythm. Though he buried himself in work, his heart held on to one fragile hope, that somewhere, somehow, Diep was still alive. And then, a miracle happened. Diep was found. She returned, frail, exhausted, but safe. When James saw her again, his world shifted. He didn't speak much. There were no grand gestures or dramatic declarations of love. Instead, he woke early the next morning and quietly moved through the kitchen, preparing congee for his mother and Diep. He hadn't cooked in a long time, but every stir of the pot carried a deep, unspoken care. In the bathroom, he had already placed new toiletries for Diep, a toothbrush, face towel, everything she might need. When Diep awoke, sunlight spilled softly through the window. She blinked, unfamiliar with the warmth of the place around her. James gently greeted her. "You're awake? Did you sleep well?" His voice, steady and warm, made her chest tighten. She nodded shyly, though her body was weak. Her heart felt strangely light. James helped her up and asked her to wash up. He had everything ready. For a girl who had spent months being treated like she didn't matter, these small acts of care struck deep. That morning, James, his mother, and Diep sat together at the table, eating the humble bowl of congee James had prepared. His mother, a kind yet once strict woman, now looked at Diep with soft eyes. She complimented the porridge, and Diep smiled, still a little hesitant, but her eyes glistened with gratitude. James didn't eat much himself. He simply watched them, his face quiet but content. After breakfast, James's mother suggested taking Diep into town for a bit of fresh air and shopping. It had been a long time since they spent any time together. At first, Diep hesitated, saying she already had clothes. But James's mother insisted. In the clothing store, she noticed Diep was no longer wearing the necklace and earrings she had once gifted her. Diep lowered her gaze, confessing, "I lost them. I was sleeping outside. I think someone stole them." The older woman simply patted her gently and said, "Don't worry. What's important is that you're safe. We'll buy new ones." They sat together later at a quiet tea shop in town, surrounded by trees and gentle breezes. Diep took a sip of iced peach tea and whispered, "No one's ever treated me like this. I feel like I finally have a family. I'm so grateful to you and James." James's mother's heart softened even more. She told Diep how worried James had been, how he didn't eat, didn't sleep, didn't talk to anyone while she was missing. He'd become a shadow of himself. Diep's eyes welled with tears. "I never meant to cause anyone pain," she said quietly. "I just didn't know if I'd make it back." Later, when asked whether she and James had talked about marriage, Diep was silent. She wasn't ready. Too much had happened. She needed time, space, healing. James's mother understood and didn't press further, only saying that she hoped one day they would find that kind of happiness. That evening, they returned home to find James already there. He had left work early to prepare dinner. The meal was simple but hearty. The three sat down again, now in a deeper comfort than before. James informed them that John, the man responsible for Diep's suffering, had been arrested. His entire operation dismantled. "You don't have to worry anymore," he told his mother. "There's no one left who can hurt her. I'll protect her. Always. Diep looked at James, eyes full of unspoken emotion. She then softly said she wanted to return to the farm, her old home, where Haki, the little boy she had cared for, was waiting. She missed the open sky, the scent of earth, the feeling of belonging. James didn't try to stop her. He simply said, "I'll take you there tomorrow." His mother hesitated, afraid for Diep's safety. But James reassured her. The danger was gone. She needed this return, to reconnect with the place that helped shape her into who she was. That night, Diep quietly packed her things, folding the new clothes that James's mother had bought her. James watched her from the doorway. They didn't say much, but everything was understood. Their bond had grown, not from dramatic confessions, but from acts of devotion, trust, and time. Once a girl trapped by fate, Diep was now embraced by a family who saw her, cherished her, and gave her the freedom to be herself. The next morning, James would drive her to the farm. But this time, it wasn't a goodbye, it was a promise. A promise that no matter how far apart they might be, their hearts would remain connected. He would visit often. He would protect her. And someday, when she was ready, they would start a new chapter, together, as equals. Not out of pity or duty, but out of love. In a world that had once been cold and cruel to her, Diep had finally found warmth, in James, in his mother, and in the quiet comfort of a home that she could call her own.